Number 1. When I was 10, it was the mid-70s. We lived in a suburb in the Midwest. My mother and father would host dinner parties most weekends. I can remember the preparation for these events starting early in the day, my mother cleaning and making food, and I was always in charge of making sure the living room was picked up. I enjoyed it as it made me feel important and grown. The guests would start to arrive around 8 p.m., just as the first signs of dusk set in. I wasn't allowed to partake in the party, but I would lurk around the door of my bedroom, peering down the hallway, catching glimpses of ladies dressed in shiny dresses and men smoking big cigars in brown polyester suits. Most nights were fun, laughter, music, and sometimes they'd even play games. I would listen to the pleasant ruckus as I fell asleep. But some nights were different. There were a handful of times I can recall falling asleep to the clinking of champagne glasses and mixtures of conversation and the occasional burst of laughter, only to wake up what seemed like only a few minutes later to eerie silence. At first, I thought maybe I'd slept through the night, but less than an hour had passed. I would drag myself out of bed and peek around the door. That's when I saw things that my mind just couldn't register. The same people were still there, same shiny dresses and men in suits, but the atmosphere had changed. They weren't jovial and loud like before. They were silent, and from where I stood, I could see they were all staring at something that was just out of my sight. Nobody speaking a word, just looking. Then they would stretch out their arms in unison and begin to whisper. I could never make out what they were saying. Most nights I would get so frightened I would jump back into my bed and hide under my pillow until I fell back asleep. Most nights, except for one. One night, I woke up just as I had before. Same eerie silence. I looked around my bedroom door, and the guests were frozen in time, staring and reaching. But this time, I didn't run. As they whispered, they began to circle the room. One guest would move to the right, then the next, until a completely different set of people would be in view. Then it happened. All at once, a splat and a dark substance thrown across their faces as if someone had popped a balloon filled with water. It laid in sprinkles and splatter on the shoulders of the woman and on the face of the bald man standing beside her. I can remember letting out a guttural groan and covering my own mouth with my hand for fear I'd be caught peeking. All the while, the only sound was the whispers. I don't remember much after, other than waking up and running into the living room to a bright Saturday morning, my father reading the newspaper, and my mother on the phone with one of her friends chatting away as she grabbed waffles from the toaster. I never told my parents what I had seen. I was afraid maybe I had gone mad and thought all of this up. But I didn't. I saw it. I don't know what I saw, but I saw it. To this day, I have never mentioned a word of it until now. They continued to have dinner parties my entire childhood, all the way up until I left for college. I never saw what happened that particular night again, but I do still have memories of the whispers. Was it a weird game? Or was it something far more dark? I guess I will never know. Number 2. My best friend lived a short distance from my house when we were young. We would have sleepovers all the time. Summer nights, school nights, my house, her house. It didn't matter. One Friday after school, I went to her house to have a sleepover. She had had dental work earlier that day and had missed school and wasn't feeling the best, so we just hung out and watched movies and took it easy. It was getting late, and we finally decided to lay down. She had a set of bunk beds in her room against the window, and we both climbed up to sleep on top. Before long, we both fell asleep. She tossed and turned quite a bit that night, likely to having dental work earlier in the day, and I woke up at some point during the night and couldn't fall back asleep, so I laid there, listening to the rain as it began to fall. All at once, she groaned and rolled over, and her face was pressed against the blinds, pushing them sideways and exposing the window. The lightning flashed, and when it did, I could have sworn I saw something. At the same time, my friend let out a slow-rising yelp. I jumped up and nearly hit my head on the ceiling. I could see her still in the same position, facing the blinds. I wasn't sure if she was still asleep or not. The lightning flashed again. I froze. It was a face. A thin face like an old man mashed against the glass, and to my horror, my friend's face was pressed against the blinds, almost touching his. I shake my friend, and she turns over and looks at me. I was now crawling off of the side of the bed. "What is it?" she asked in a sleepy voice. "There's a face in the window." I could barely get the words out. She shuffled across the bed, and we both landed in the floor. We ran to the living room and yelled for her mom. She came out and went straight to the window and jerked back the blinds. He wasn't there. She then asked us if we were just scared and asked if we'd watched something scary before bed. We explained that we hadn't, and after a long night of searching around the house, inside and out, we finally climbed in bed with her mom and fell asleep. The next morning, we looked around outside to see if we could find footprints or anything to prove that he was real. We didn't find anything. The bunk beds were taken apart to make 2 twin beds, as far away from the window as possible. Did I dream it? Did she dream it? No, he was very much real, and I hope to never see him again. Number 3. I am a 28-year-old male in pretty good shape, and I love the outdoors. Summer 2020 was a strange one for everybody, and I would spend a lot of my time hiking. I would stay fairly close to home, and I didn't push my limits, but sometimes I'll admit I would go a little further than maybe I should have. One morning, I left out with a backpack and fully charged phone and went walking into the woods. Everything was normal, and I was enjoying burning off energy from being stuck in the house. I had only gotten a few feet into the tree line when I heard someone call my name. My knee-jerk reaction was to answer, "Yeah?" I knew better, as I've always heard you should never answer, but it happened before I realized I'd done it. I started to backtrack to make sure someone wasn't really there. Only one person knew where I was going hiking, and they would never come out to yell my name. I decided to continue the walk. Maybe, I thought, I just heard it in my own head. It does happen, you know. I went in a little further and pulled out my phone and started taking pictures to upload when I got back. I like doing this as a pastime, and in 2020, finding something to pass time was a luxury. I snapped some photos of sunlight beaming through the trees and some of mushrooms. I would check ever so often to see if the shots were acceptable, and one stopped me dead in my tracks. In the photo, I could see someone standing just off to the right of the frame. I pulled it up closer, and then it hit me. The person was me. But it couldn't be. I was the one taking the picture, and there was no chance it was a reflection. The person wasn't even standing in the same position as I was. I couldn't believe it. I immediately turned around and started walking quickly back towards the opening of the path I had come in. As I hurried, I could swear it felt like someone was following me. There was no time to look back, so I continued until I reached the opening and could see the car across the road where I'd parked. I was almost out. All of a sudden, I heard it again, and this time there was no question about it. It was my name. This time I didn't answer. I broke out into a full sprint. I hopped in my car and sped away, never looking back. When I got home, I went through my pictures, and sure enough, it was still there. The photo of me, or not me. I didn't go back to those woods, and the next time I went hiking, I did bring someone with me, 6 feet apart, of course. What yelled my name that day, and who was that in the photo? Was it me, or was it something that was hunting me? I will never know. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe, hit the like button, and as always, sleep well.